This is the Mother's Day edition. Hey, welcome back to the fifth quarter. This is the Mother's Day edition. If you're a new listener today, I want to say a special welcome. I've noticed a lot of new listeners in the past several weeks here in the fifth quarter, and I'm thrilled to have each and every one of you here. So if you're new to me and to my podcast, hello. My name is Sandy Adams. No, I'm not an athlete, but I am a photographer turned personal brand and career strategist and a speaker. Podcasting was actually something I discovered back on a Friday night in 2017, and I've never looked back. I've been running my business for over 14 years now, and I specialize in helping professionals discover their career passions, monetize those passions, and build a revenue-generating career. And also, I'm an avid basketball fan, specifically Memphis. So I guess that's where the sports comes in, maybe. So now you're probably wondering, is this a sports show or not? Yes and no. This show is all about former athletes from any sport you can possibly think of. If they had some type of competitive career, then I want to talk to them. Their journey in the sport they love and how retirement impacted their careers, how they learned to pivot, the ups and downs they went through, how they found a new passion, and what they're doing today. This show is as much about sports as it is about career pivots, mindset, and strategy, but always with a great story. Now that we're all caught up, let's dive into this Mother's Day edition. Since Mother's Day is literally a few days away this Sunday, I wanted to visit all of the mothers who had been guests on the show. And when I say visit, I really mean recap, okay? I wanted to recap, refresh, have you become reacquainted, and maybe you've missed some episodes, the mothers who've actually been guests on this show. So first up is Coach Whitney Bays. She's an assistant coach on the University of Memphis women's basketball team. The second snippet is from my conversation with Coach Alex Simmons, the head coach of the University of Memphis women's basketball. The final snippet in this episode is from my conversation with Kelly Toner-Munt. She's a retired national rowing champion at both the high school and the college level. These three women are mothers. And they also talk in their episodes about how their mothers impacted their lives. So for each one of these, I pulled out a short snippet from their interviews. And I encourage you to go and listen to their full interviews, as well as all of the interviews I've done. This is actually episode number 41. So it was my way of doing a recap and also connecting it to Mother's Day. So if you want to rewatch these episodes, or if you have not already seen them, go and give them a listen. You can find all the links to watch and listen on our website at 5thquarterpodcast.com. So enjoy.
Again, and I think coming from like a small town, like I didn't even really know that I was that good at basketball yet.
Right.
And I didn't know that I could get a scholarship or like I could get my school. Yes, like I was just out there literally having fun playing, trying to be the best player out there. Like I wanted to make people like talk about me and stuff, but I didn't know that I was good enough to get like a scholarship and stuff.
So it's interesting because like Caitlin's parents also played basketball, and her mom was her high school coach. But I'm curious about your dad was obviously, because he had been through college and played pro. So he's probably just letting you enjoy the game, which is, I think, what parents should do, you know?
My dad, he was real hard on me. He really pushed me and like kept me humble throughout my process. But I just feel like we never really had that conversation of like, I guess when I was younger, going until I went to high school and got all those letters, it was just like, you're getting better at basketball. But it was never like, what is the goal? I just know I wanted to play pro. You know what I mean? I wanted to be in the W. Yes. So I didn't know. I never really thought about the steps, which is crazy, of getting there until I started getting recruited. Yeah.
You know, it's not crazy because I know several coaches that coach middle school and high school, and they and you know, they talk about, the kids don't really think about the process.
Yeah.
They're just like, I want to be Steph Curry or I want to
Yeah.
be LeBron James. And they don't think about what's involved in the process,
Yeah.
not only the recruiting aspect, but also the conditioning, the repetitive drills and all that kind of stuff. But I lost my train of thought because I had a question about what your dad had said. Well, we'll go on. So,
Yeah.
so, and I do believe you said you got injured when you were in high school.
I did. It was going into my senior year. Um, it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever been through. When we talk about the recruiting process back then, also, like, I didn't have social media.
Right.
So, like, now everybody posts all their offers online. So that was like another factor leading into it. And people don't talk about like the pressure sometimes that comes with that, and being a top player in your state or even in the country, like the expectation. I used to tell people I could have, 16 and 15 rebounds and I was like overrated, but then I'd have 30 and 10 and I'm a ball hog and
Right.
so it was just always an expectation of, and it's kind of hard to deal with when you're young. You know what I mean? If you don't have people guiding you in the right direction.
So, how did you deal with that?
Really, my family. Like my mom was a big support system. My sister, she was the same height as me, and she hated basketball actually. So they really saw me as like a person before a player.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
think that's like very important, especially when you're young. All these grown adults have these expectations of you. And that goes back to even me not winning a state championship. You know what I mean? People are like, how is this one of the top players in the country and she can't win a
Sure.
state championship? So,
You just heard a snippet from my conversation with assistant coach Whitney Bays. Next up, we have the head coach of the University of Memphis women's basketball team, Coach Alex Simmons. And here's a snippet from our conversation. No, I was very impressed with it, and just looking at the whole trajectory of your career, just the influence and the ins and the outs of that. If we're talking to young girls out there in middle school or high school, does it benefit them to play up, to play with bigger and taller and tougher females? Does that help their game?
It could. I think it depends on skill level. I was a player who, fortunately I developed quickly. And not everybody is on the same path. Not everybody has the same skill level, physicality, whatever the case. So, I think sometimes it does, but I think there has to be a realistic outlook on and a realistic plan for if you're ready,
Right.
if that particular young lady is ready. I was in a position where when colleges came to see those older players, they were going to see me too, because I was, again,
Right.
fortunate enough to get some playing time my freshman year. Um, and so, because of that, again, I was able to get those opportunities in college and to allow coaches to see me play in the summer and when they came to our high school games. Because again, you got to remember we're in a program who's nationally ranked,
Yes.
so the attention was kind of it was kind of going to be there regardless.
Do you think that it's easier for players in on teams like that are nationally ranked, that have that high exposure, as opposed to teams that are from really small towns and don't get as much exposure?
Well, yeah, I definitely think there's an advantage, but you have to be a good team to get, the attention and the exposure. But at the same time, that's why a lot of players in the summertime, most of the time the best players in the state or the best players in the surrounding area are on the same team. So that's where, they get their exposure.
Sure. Um, the recruiting process for you, were your parents heavily involved in that, or did they just kind of let you decide where you were going to go?
They were definitely heavily involved because I did not like talking to coaches. That just wasn't something that my 15-year-old self wanted to do, is talk to people who were twice my age. I say the same thing now about our recruits. I'm pretty sure that they don't probably don't want to be talking to
Yeah.
this woman who is, older, way older than them. But so mine were, yes, to answer your question, mine were heavily involved.
um, so how did you end up choosing Tennessee?
It's funny. I had three. I was down to three, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee. So all in the SEC, not on purpose. Um, and I got a phone call throughout the process. I was kind of narrowing some things down. I had went on 2 visits, I believe, and I got a phone call from Pat, and I was in that moment, and during that time, I was leaning towards going to Florida with Carolyn Peck. And Pat called me, and she said what she said, and um in her stern way of doing things. And I also, at the time, my grandmother was, she was old. She wasn't sick or anything, but she was just older, and I knew that if I wanted her to be able to see me play in person, that being close
Right.
would be important. And so, that's kind of where the decision came.
That was a snippet from my conversation with University of Memphis women's basketball head coach Alex Simmons. Next up, we have Kelly Toner Munt, who was a former national champion in both high school rowing and collegiate rowing. She's also the wife of former NBA player Todd Munt. Now, here's a snippet from her conversation.
We go down there and we got third, which sounds awful, right?
Right.
And we're rowing this race, and that's the race where it all came together. And this
Oh.
boat's lifting and it's going and we're clicking, and I'm just like, but we're not winning, right? We're not used to seeing like boats ahead of us.
Right.
And I'm like, but this feels awesome. And we get third and we're just quiet and we row back to the dock.
Did you know it at the time? Did you have that moment where you realize, oh my God, this is what the coach had been talking about?
Yes. But it was
Wow.
conflicting because we weren't winning.
Yeah.
So I think I wasn't prepared for that. Like I don't I feel like I just remember being like, this is it. And like I think in a moment it was kind of ruined because
Like anticlimactic, I guess, in a way.
yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we rode back to the dock, and I think our heads were kind of hung low, and he met us there, and he was like, why are your heads hung so low? And we're like, well, we got third. And typically I think in this race we haven't even medaled.
Right.
He was like, well, did you leave it all on the course? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, because you can tell by when you understand rowing, you can tell by watching the bow ball. If it's lifting, you can tell with the boat
Sure.
what it's doing. So he knew. And he was like, how did it feel? I saw the lift. Did you feel the lift? And we're like, yeah. And he was like, it looked awesome. And he's like, could you have done anything else? And we're like, no. And he was like, then you hold your heads up. He's like, that was awesome. He's like,
That's
you've
right.
nothing to be ashamed of. And he was like, you hold your heads up and walk around here like you've been here before. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. And just that whole thing. And we were like,
Aw.
okay.
Hey, that's it for today. If you liked this episode, I would love for you to take a screenshot and tag me in your Instagram stories and tag me at official Sandy Adams. Please let me know what you love the most about this episode. What wisdom, what little tidbit or something that you really liked. And if you haven't left a review before now, I would genuinely appreciate if you could take 2 minutes and leave a review, a written review specifically, especially if you're on Apple. Or if you do take a screenshot of this episode, send it to me in my DMs on Instagram at official Sandy Adams with your review. I would love to give you a shout out in my Instagram stories. Please make sure also that you are following the show on your favorite platform because I've got tons of great guests coming up over the next few months. And if you did not catch last week's episode, episode 40, I introduced a brand new subseries entitled On the Sideline. Yes, I kicked it off with an interview with Angel Martinez, the head guy of Broad Street South Sports Network out of Tampa, Florida. He gave me love back last summer when I first started this podcast with Michael Wilson. And he has just been a great supporter since then. I had him on to talk about how he got his network started and how he just recently went full-time with it. Yes, he took that side hustle and turned it into a full-time gig. And so we talk about that story. Thank you all for listening to this episode. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there.